Testing, testing. Oh, yes, you can hear me. I tend to be loud without this, so with this, I'm going to be even louder. Is this too much? Are we good? All right. So I'm just going to start this the way I start almost all of my events. And some of you just go with it. Hola, mi gente! I'm so excited to have this moment with you guys. I'm sorry, my Boricua-ness, my Puerto Rican-ness comes out wherever I go. So, for those who are lost in translation, that's hello, my people. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited that you're here. And I'm getting the energy and the excitement out now because I promise you the mood is going to shift pretty quickly. So, I just wanted to take an opportunity to say, first and foremost, thank you to you guys for making the hall to get here today. I know that you could have been anywhere, but you're being here today to get educated, to raise awareness, and I promise you will walk out differently than what you walked in. I promise you of that. I'm going to talk for like 5 minutes. You guys good standing for 5 minutes? Okay, good. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tamika Lachey Morales, and I am a recovering teacher. I had to do a U46 pun, I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. And so I am a former teacher from the very proud school district U46. If you're from U46, say woo woo! I love that the school district is representing. I'm also the proud mom of a legendary kid who really is the genesis behind the Autism Hero Project. How many of you have heard about the Autism Hero Project? Raise your hand. I love it. I love it. A lot of you. That's right. You give it up for Autism Hero Project. So we started back in 2017, and our mission was simple: to prepare kids with autism for the world and to prepare the world for them. And for me, I was working at a great school district that had great medical benefits, and so I had access to all of the therapies, right, that my son needed to be able to thrive. But not everybody in Illinois had access. Unfortunately, the Medicaid system did not allow children on the autism spectrum to access the #1 gold standard form of therapy for autistics, which was known as ABA therapy, Applied Behavior Analysis Therapy. And that financial barrier to access just to me seemed criminal, to be honest with you. So we fought with legislation to have Medicaid cover it. And in the meanwhile, we decided to cover that gap. And we became the financial bridge where we actually purchased and sponsored medical insurance, private medical insurance, so that these kids had access to all of the therapies that would allow them to thrive and strive and reach their full potential. And to date, we have funded $300,000 of medical insurance policies for our children on the autism spectrum. But we didn't stop there. Autistic children will become autistic adults, because if you have autism, you have it for life. And we know that in the state, there's a cliff, actually nationwide. When an autistic turns 22, there's just a dive in services and resources. And one of those major, dives is unemployment. The unemployment percentile for those on the spectrum is between 80 and 85%, even with a college degree. So I thought, how can we service that population? And I came up with 2.5 years ago, the Evolving Heroes Education Scholarship. But it wasn't just for university, because all of our kids, they have different talents. Some of them may not want to go to university. Maybe they want to do a different vocation. Maybe they want to do the culinary arts. Maybe they want to get into cybersecurity. Maybe they just want to do theater, architecture, right? And so we started an education scholarship that allowed them to access whatever would allow them to get skills, knowledge, talent, so that they can gain meaningful employment. To date, because we started that 2 years ago, we have issued 12 education scholarships for autistics who are anywhere in architecture, culinary, university, mathematicians. It's amazing. And their stories, when they write their stories, are just so touching and endearing. And you're going to meet one of those scholarship grantees later today. And then the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, there was so much social unrest. And we were stuck at home, glued to our tubes, our TVs, and we got to see a lot of ugly. A lot of ugly. And part of that was we saw first responders who are supposed to be our heroes who were not answering the call correctly. And we witnessed a lot of trauma. We even witnessed death. And I was so unsettled in my spirit about that. So I did what I always did. I decided to do something about it. And our third pillar became training of our first responders and also donating sensory kits to all police vehicles that have sensory fidgets, communication boards, whiteboards, all the things that would help someone to self-regulate, self-soothe, calm down, and prevent crisis. And that started with my friend, Eric Echeverria. Come over, Eric. Eric, you need your own microphone, actually. So Eric and I go way back from the Puerto Rican Heritage Organization here in Elgin, your brother and I specifically. And you were doing a course, remember? You were in the middle of taking a class, and you called me up one day, and you're like, I need to do a presentation, and you talked about autism. You may not even remember that much, but you did. And then he said, I have an idea. I want to do some kind of like autism celebration. Awareness. And I was like, we're past awareness, remember? Yeah. He was like, autism awareness. It's like, dude, we're so past that. Aren't you with the times?
Well, you know, Tamika is complicated, so she's going to make sure she's right. Am I correct? So I'm like, yes, Tamika, you're right.
Thank you. My husband needs to go to your school. So I was like, we need more than just awareness. We need awareness, we need acceptance, we need education. Like, there's so much more. And we collaborated. And that's where Heroes Unite Autism Acceptance Celebration in the city of Elgin through our collaboration with the Elgin Police Department began. And Eric planted the seed. And I don't know if you want to say something about that.
No, I can. I got to go back. You know, it's easy to have an idea and share it, but you have to have the right leader in place. And at that time, my chief, I call her my chief. I'm the chief of Peoria, Illinois. But my chief, Anna Lally, who I commonly refer to her as that, was there. And, you know, you have to have the right person that's going to understand the vision.
Amen.
And be able to say, yeah, go ahead and go run with it. Tell me what that looks like. What do you need from me? So I had all the support at the department to be able to do that. Otherwise, I could have all the ideas that I want. It was not going to go anywhere. But thank you to Chief Lally, who understood the vision, gave me the leeway to go ahead and run with it. I don't even know if I was on the command staff yet or not.
You were.
I can't remember.
You were.
But yeah, so it was great, first of all, to have that ability to be able to say, hey, let's try something new, and get that blessing and be able to just run with it.
Absolutely. And so our first year that we did this was a little over 4.5 years ago.
Right.
And we brought in Jennifer McCarthy. And it was a huge, it was our first, and we didn't know how it was going to turn out, but it was the first of what became many now.
Yeah, I learned how bossy Tamika was. Is that okay to say that here?
Listen.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I learned how
They'll
bossy
learn
Tamika
quick.
is. I knew she was bossy already. But we got it done, and honestly, I say that jokingly, but Tamika wanted to make sure everything was top-notch, that we did this the best we could, that we had all the resources we can, that we stayed on the timeline, that we stayed within the budget. What do we need? How do we get it there? And we made it happen. It was great.
And it grew, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew. And it grew because I had the support of Chief Anna Lally. So Eric left us after the first year. And I don't know, he got some like big promotion or something and became like the chief of police of some big city somewhere far, far, far away. What was the name of that? No, Peoria. And he has moved on to big and better things, but he has not forgotten. And, I know you haven't shared this, and I hope it's okay that I share it, but the reason why this was so important to him is because he has autism in his life. Yeah, you didn't say anything about
I'm
that.
sorry. So, you know,
Do I need to give you a script too?
Bossy Tamika. No, I didn't get the script. But I will say this. Is growing up, I have my brother in the white hat here. He's 46 years old. Has autism. He's deaf and is autistic. And growing up, it was very, very difficult. My parents went through, there were some very difficult things that they went through. He was an escape artist. He'd get out the house and he'd run. My father had to deadbolt the house. So we had a key. We had to use a key to get out, which is very dangerous. But back then, what else did you do? And we tried, my parents did the best that they could. He would break windows. We'd have to put plexiglass windows in. There was all kinds of things that happened. But as I progressed in life, came back from the military, became a police officer, well, I knew when I saw certain things, I understood it. I said, that's not a bad parent. It's somebody who, you know, you go to somebody's house because they're missing their child, or you find a kid somewhere and they have some kind of learning disability or autism or whatever it may be. Based on my experience, I knew, okay, we don't need to charge a parent. Maybe we need to give them some resources, but get them some help, or just get the kid home, because I knew what it was like to see that happen. I didn't have bad parents. I had a brother who we didn't understand, and you can imagine 46 years ago, different times. So I didn't want to impact somebody differently, but my experience allowed me to have that empathy and understand and be able to change certain things.
So the first year, I started to get to know Chief Lally, and man, I was like, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. Crazy enough, we're the same age right now. As of this week, we're the same age right now. Yeah. So
21.
yes, with decades of experience. So I'm so excited because I have, I don't even know if you know how much I admire you. Female chief of police in a city that, you know, that could be like hard, really, really hard. And somehow she does it with such ease and grace on the outside. And she was like, what do you need, Tamika? What do you need, Tamika? What do you need, Tamika? And no matter what I needed, she always said yes. And trust me, I dared to push the envelope.
Just a little.
Just a little, right? And I wanted to just share this. The reason why this documentary exists today is because earlier in the year when we were planning Heroes Unite, we got to go to lunch. And I'll be completely transparent. I was frustrated. Actually, I was beyond frustrated. I was actually pretty angry. I was mad because we started offering all of this police training that we were sponsoring, and we were donating sensory kits, and unfortunately one of our speakers has an emergency and he couldn't be here today, but he's the crisis intervention person who we pay to do all this training. And there was a lot of local police stations, hence why I have the right people in the room today, who we offered this training to pay for it, to give them the resources, to give them the tools, the knowledge, the education, and they wouldn't take advantage of it. And I, in my frustration, was like, yo, girl to girl, you need to tell me, what the hell is it? Like, how do I get these people on board to be like you? Because it obviously comes from the top down. What do I gotta do? And honestly, that's the seed that planted all of the work that you're about to see shortly. So thank you.
All right. So I want to just say thank you, Tamika, first of all. I want to say, let me get some thank yous first and foremost. Thank you to everyone that's here this afternoon to spend a couple hours with us. It is absolutely important and imperative that we share our knowledge, we connect, we have relationships, and that's how things happen. Second, I want to thank all the members of the Elgin Police Department who are in the audience today that made this happen. So we have social service workers here, crisis interventionists, officers that are here too, so please get to know them. We can't make this happen without their assistance and help. And more importantly, so Eric, We're here today because of Eric. There's no two ways about it. So Eric at the time was a commander in the Elgin Police Department. He's now the chief in Peoria, where they are so lucky to have him. There is no doubt about it. So he is beyond, he was one of the best people that I've ever worked with in my whole entire career. And he asked me, hey, I didn't know that I didn't meet Tamika until that first year. And I said, wow, she is high energy. But I love it. Let's go, right? So, when somebody walks into the room and they have that energy and that intensity and they believe what they feel it. And I was like, these are the people that make the world go around, and these are the people that change the world. And so Eric was like, we want to do something. And, at the Elgin Police Department, we had done some autism training for our officers. But this just kicked it into high gear. And so he took the lead. And there's a lot of, details that have to go into planning a first-year event because you want it to be successful so people keep coming back. So, Eric, thank you for everything that you did for the Elgin Police Department. You're amazing. You're awesome. I can't say enough about you. So he's being a little humble here because,
I can't believe it. I don't understand who this guy is.
But he is why we are here today. And so with that, too, just in terms of the Elgin Police Department and, why we're doing what we're doing, it's so important. The department has a culture of, learning, right? Constantly inquiring, that inquisitive mindset, find out what's going on. Can we do something better? Should we be doing something better? And then connecting with our community and saying, what is it that you expect from us and how can we deliver? And in terms of the autistic community, I've sat through training classes, but really over the past 4 or 5 years and talking with Tamika and hearing stories and listening to Eric and, I knew about his brother and some of the reasons why he was doing what he was doing. It makes you realize that together as a community, there's a lot that we can do and there's a lot that we should be doing. And so when she asks, I give. It's simple as that. So Tamika, thank you for everything that you do. You're an amazing woman, amazing inspiration. The people here today are going to get to meet someone who's you're just on fire, just everywhere, doing everything. And that's what you need. For things to change, especially in the police profession, there are some horrendous and terrible things that have happened. And a lot of times it's because the officer just does it. That's inherently who they are as a person. And people like that in this profession make it harder for people like me and Eric and the good officers. But sometimes officers do things because they don't know. And that falls on the administration of a police department to say, I need to give this to you, and I need to learn, and I need to teach, and I need to make sure. And so that's our role as administrators, as police chiefs. And so when you take that role seriously, this is the easy part. So I appreciate everyone being here. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Tamika. And, this is going to be a great
I just want to really quickly, before we even get into it, couple things. Will my dignitaries please either stand up, or wave or something? We have some amazing dignitaries in here who said yes, and I want you to know that because you are their constituents, and I want you to see that they are here, ready to learn. So please raise your hands. Thank you for being here. Thank you for saying yes. Also, Autism Hero Project board members, can you please stand up? So many of you try to hide. And ambassadors, can you please wave? At least wave. Thank you. We have a couple who are hiding. Obviously, we got to thank Judson because they are the most gracious hosts, providing the IV, the AV, the venue, the technology, the hosts. Give it up to our RISE program here at Judson, who are greeting you, giving out the brochures. Amazing. And then, come here, Ashley. This documentary, yes, could not happen without my other Boricua in crime here. This is our production company, Bright Cap Entertainment. Ashley, I just want to publicly say thank you, and to your wife, who's also Ashley. I want to thank you for taking my text messages at 1 in the morning when a new idea dropped, and for replying at 3 in the morning saying I got it done. All of the late calls, the crazy hours, for taking my intensity and being my calm it down, right? We're going to make it happen, Tamika. I cannot be on this journey with a better person, and you did such an amazing job bringing these stories to life. And I just want, if you have any production needs, media needs, anything, this is your man. I don't know if he does, he might mind you texting him at 1, 2 in the morning, but he's definitely your man. He always shows up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been more than an honor. It's been truly just an amazing journey of being able to do this over the last couple of years with you. You entrusting what I feel is a calling in my life to put something together like this, and the videos we've done together for the galas, and it's been a true blessing. So I'm very thankful for you. I've learned a lot from you, and just the drive and the passion that you have is so evident, not just in your personality, but in the results of calling people out, to do a certain work. So I thank each and every one of you for being here and being a part of this, not only because you're supporting it, but you're actually a part of it now. And this cause goes beyond even Elgin or the state of Illinois. This is a national cause that we are supporting, as far as giving first responders the needed training just to serve our communities better. So I'm so thankful to be a part of that, so thankful to do it alongside you. And anytime you need me, whether it's 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll most likely answer because I don't sleep. So 3 kids, boys. All right.
2 kids, 2 boys. All right, are you guys ready? So, couple important things before we hit start. The first 4 minutes and 26 seconds of this documentary have very strong content, very graphic content. So this is your official trigger warning. I know that I have many autistics in the room today, and maybe some people who've experienced something. We have 3 counselors, licensed counselors and social workers who are in the atrium. We have a sensory room that we've dedicated to you downstairs. If you want to come back in after that first 4 minutes and 26 seconds, you are welcome to do so. There's still going to be some content, but it is not as constant as what you were about to see. We have bags of fidget sensory things. If you just want to grab a fidget and bring it back in, that's okay too. But I did want to let you guys know that we have that stuff available, and please take advantage of it. I love that I just saw 2 rows of people walk out to take advantage of that opportunity. And without further ado, Heroes Unite. In a moment of crisis, understanding can be the difference between life and death. Let's equip our heroes with the knowledge to protect every life.
Bullets tore through Lyndon's shoulder, both ankles, intestines, and bladder.
He was running away.
It was torture.
The tragic death of a teenager with autism sparking outrage.
Where's he at? Hey, get back! Get back! You're getting shot! Hey, get back! Get back! Get back! Get back! Get back in the residence right now! Get back in the residence right now! We're gonna give him help. We're gonna give him help. We're gonna give him help. Get back in the residence.
Why would you do that? Why are you
shoot my baby.
We're gonna get him help. We're gonna get him help. We're gonna get him help. Get back inside.
Where the hell is your taser? Why would you
Get
shoot
back
him?
inside.
You're fucking you. Why would you shoot him?
Get back inside.
Help him, quick, stop. Oh my God. I need to know.
A knife here. Knife. Let me. You have gloves? All right. Drop it. Taser deployed. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. We will get you help. I'm out. Man, we're trying. Get on the ground, sir. Lay down. Hands in that. Lay down. Lay down. Lay down. Now, please back up. Pull one out. Sir, lay down. Lay down. He's fine, man. Right now. Watch my back, please. I am. I got you. Watch my back. Watch her. Hey, get back out there. We understand that.
He's going handcuffs. Relax, lady. You understand what I'm saying?
Hey, AJ, watch my back.
When I first heard about the diagnosis of autism, especially for my son, who is a beautiful brown boy who's gonna grow up to be a black man, I was scared. I've heard stories, and you've seen them, about, people not understanding people on, the spectrum, and black boys and men being shot for anything. I was scared when you hear autism because I was scared for him and what that would mean.
We just recently learned that there are approximately 1 million, close to 1 million police officers nationwide, and there is still such a lack of autism training. And so we wanted to be a big resource to that because we want to make sure that we're providing the awareness, the education, and we want to make sure that our children get home safely.
I'm Robbie Soberano. I'm a police officer in Elgin for the past 18 years, here in Elgin, Illinois. I'm also an autism dad. I'm a father to a 12-year-old boy named Benjamin, who gives us so much joy.
So you've been an officer for 18 years. You've been an officer longer than you've been a dad. And so can you tell me, when you first started as an officer, did you have autism training 18 years ago?
We had something, with our yearly in-services that would talk about the mental health aspect of dealing with individuals in the community, but I don't remember anything specific to autism.
Right.
Just over the past few years, we've kind of ramped it up, and I'm glad we have. And I feel like Elgin's in the forefront of just being the most progressive department when it comes to training, when it comes to autism.
Oh, I agree.
and I'm so proud to be part of this department that actually pushes this, because this is so important, not just as a parent of a child with autism, but as a police officer, because it helps me be better in my job, in a nutshell. It helps me be better in my job and better serve the community. So I think when before my son was diagnosed with autism, I didn't really understand it as much. But after my son was diagnosed, it changed. It kind of flipped in my head. It was like a paradigm shift in my head, and I realized, you know what, I've been going at it wrong. I need to be more patient with people that have with autism, and listen to them more and really understand them more and just be more emphatic. And I think that's what being a dad with with a son with autism is going to help me, because I see that. And I always say this. I always say the fact that when I see a person with autism, I see my son. I see my son, whether they're 30 years old, 50 years old, or 5 years old. I see my son in them, because I see all the qualities, all the traits that my son has. They have the same thing, and it helps me help those people.
I saw multiple people go up to one officer in particular who has a lot of involvement with kids on the spectrum.
Actually, they all know who he is.
Okay, Robbie.
Yeah, our community hero who I'm sure will be in this video. He's been in several of our other videos.
I know Robbie, at least 3 families at the event, because I heard them go up to you, said you came and saved us on a night that was the worst night of our life. You saved our child's life. You helped us find a missing child. They wanted to take a picture with you. They wanted to thank you. They wanted to talk to you. And so I think sometimes we don't realize the behind the scenes and how important it is to train the police department, because one day one of us might be calling them.
So I imagine that even your fellow officers must come to you to ask you questions, right?
Yes.
And I want to back up, because I do think that Elgin is one of the police departments that is on the forefront of autism training, but I really want to give credit to the chief.
Yes.
Chief Anilali has really done an amazing job that I know of for really having that, almost like that longing, that attitude that she wants everyone in the whole department, not even if you're just a police officer, everyone at the station she wants trained, and she continues that training. It's not like just a one and done, like if she was just marking it off the list. It actually was, she is so invested in this training. She's so invested in our citywide celebration, this autism acceptance celebration that we've been working in collaboration for so many years on. And so I want to say that, is there a difference when you realize that the chief is on board, and it's really the chief who's kind of spearheading this?
Absolutely. I think it's from the top down. You have faith knowing that what you're doing is supported by your chief.
I've been a police officer since 1996, and when I was hired at the Elgin Police Department, I can't even remember receiving training about autism and what specific things to look for and how to respond. And as the evolution of policing continues, it's also important that we start recognizing the types of calls that we're going to have with people and what are the specific needs of people in our community. A few years ago, Officer Robbie Soberano of the police department, whose son has autism, and he was very open with that. And I think in an organization, in a police department, if you have officers who understand the mission of the department, which is to be open, to be responsive to the community, to ensure that every part of our community is taken care of, you'll maybe get somebody who will say, you know what, I have a personal connection here, and I'm not embarrassed, I'm not shy to say that. And the benefit to the department and to the community is that other officers can see themselves in that officer and say, well, wait a minute, I know Robbie, what if I did have contact with his son? I want to be empowered to have the skills, the tools, the knowledge, so what can we do here? So tapping into our community resources and tapping into the Autism Hero Project, that has been a great relationship that started 4 years ago. So for 4 years, we've done an autism awareness event. And every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And, we invite community partners. We invite people from the community, people from outside the Elgin community come here because we're one of the police departments. Our community engagement philosophy has been in place for many, many years. So it's not unusual for us to do a community program. However, we try to make those programs beneficial to the community in terms of not just the engagement with the officers so they get to know us, but what are we pushing out? What information, what resources? So for our autism, event that we have, it brings together people and it does a couple things. One, the officers are here. people who are autistic can come here and meet the officers. We do a traffic stop assimilation where they can sit and actually go through a mock traffic stop so they see what that looks like in a very in an environment that's, that's secure, where those questions can be asked, where it's not as frightening as if that were happening actually in real life. Over the past 4 or 5 years, the police department has really made a concerted effort to focus on training.
I spent right about 23 years in law enforcement. I retired about 2 years ago. In my career, I did a little bit of everything: patrol, I was in our gang unit, school resource officer. But one of the biggest things is, about 10 years ago, my 2 youngest sons were diagnosed with autism. And as my wife and I took on this life-altering diagnosis, we began to learn as much about autism as we possibly could so that we could be the best advocates as our sons as they grew older. And as I learned more about the disability, I began to wonder what would happen if my 2 worlds collided, meaning my professional life as a police officer and my personal life as a father of 2 sons with autism. Did we as police officers really understand the characteristics and behaviors associated with autism? And the answer was no. So I put it together. I did it for my own department. I trained our officers. Then another department called. Then another department called. Then another department called. And about 5,000 first responders later, I'm still kind of training this on a fairly frequent basis. And it's critical that our officers have this training. When I went to the police academy 20 plus years ago, there were no classes with autism. I didn't even know what autism was. I'd heard the term, but I couldn't tell you a single thing about the disability. And now it's become such an integral part of our lives as a family. I've been able to blend those 2 parts of my life together to be able to put this training out for first responders across the country. We know that our loved ones with disabilities, specifically autism, are 7 times more likely to have contact with law enforcement because of the disability, even though they're only about 1% of the population in the world. And it's really the characteristics of the disability that can lead to these interactions. The most common calls for service that we're going to receive as law enforcement when interacting with somebody with autism specifically is wandering elopement events or self-stimulating or aggressive behavior towards themselves or others. And these are the critical ones because we now know they're in crisis. So how do we de-escalate this crisis? And it's understanding what the cause of the crisis is.
Our son now wears an Angel Sense tracker because he's an eloper and he will run and not understand safety. It's really important that local police departments do training on autism because there are so many things that might look confusing if you're not trained on autism. So my 9-year-old is a flapper. He does this with his hands. It's sensory regulating for him. It's cute. He's 9. He doesn't look like he's going to hurt anyone. He's 54 pounds. But if he's 19 and 200 pounds and somebody sees him doing this, they might get confused and think something's wrong or he might be on drugs. So it's really important to have this training so that the police departments and first responders can understand and know, okay, that might be an autistic person. Let's approach in a different way versus somebody that might be a threat to our community.
Characteristics associated with autism: nonverbal, non-speaking, stimming, aggressive behaviors, self-injurious behaviors, deficits in tone of voice, elopement, lack of eye contact or eye aversion, attachment to an inanimate object, lack of understanding of body language, lack of understanding of boundaries, echolalia.
Every 2 years, officers receive 4 hours of advanced autism awareness training. Additionally, every year there's a touch on it in something in our in-service. And I think the most important thing is that education allows the officer to understand when they're going to a call for service. And it may present very differently than what is actually going on. So to have that knowledge and to say, you know what, I need to take a step back. And even having the awareness even before getting to the call, what is the information that we're receiving from our communications operators? And so we have a program here where people can give us that information. And they can, before anything happens, they could say, hey, I have a family member who has autism. These are the things that might trigger them. So if I do call, I want you to know that. All this plays into just a full circle of understanding and responding appropriately so that whatever is happening in that incident, that the officer and the community member, that they go home safely at night.
Police Department resources, drones, special needs registry, premise alert, canine dogs and therapy dogs, sensory kits in police vehicles, social media, alternative forms of communication, community partnerships, crisis intervention units.
If we know what the function of the behavior is, we know how to work through the situation, whether it's detention, escape, tangible, physical, or sensory. And a lot of times it's as simple as it's just sensory overload. It's an environmental consideration, whether it's too much light, too much sound, too much stimuli, or creating this emotional response based off of that. And if we can reduce that sensory input, limiting them to their officers unseen, turning down our radios, not going lights and sirens, backing off a crowd of people, we will naturally start to de-escalate that problem behavior because we're reducing that sensory input.
When officers respond to calls where somebody is autistic, and first of all, it's kind of, am I able to communicate effectively to find out what's going on? Because we're not what are we getting called there for? Is this person just running away from home? Is there some type of event happening where they maybe are a victim and they have been victimized? And how are we going to be able to communicate to be able to effectively get what we need so that we can be an advocate for them? So if it's just somebody leaving home, that's where we have a lot of skills and tools and resources. We do have a drone program here, so we're able to put a drone up and find and locate someone hopefully quicker than we would with just people in vehicles.
I oversee our department's drone program. I'm the operations patrol commander, but a part of that falls on our drone team.
And how long have you guys had drones now at the department?
We started with policy and implementing our team in 2016, and we had our first flight in 2017.
Wow.
So seven years.
Okay, and do you realize that you're utilizing drones more often now than ever before?
Yes,
Or
we track it every year, and I believe from 2017 where we logged like 25 to 30 flights. Last year we had mid to upper 80s logged flights, and we fly for a number of reasons: crash scenes, crime scenes, missing persons, search and rescue. With the missing persons is definitely probably in our top 3 causes for flights. The drones have been proven year over year after year. They save time, money, resources, and they increase personnel safety. If you don't want to startle someone, you don't have 10 officers coming into the woods or possibly a barking dog or something, the drone could spot on a thermal source, a heat source that the person's out there. But we also have spotlights, we have a speaker system. Mom and dad could leave a message and play it on the
it'll record
speaker.
their voice,
Yep.
a voice that's
Yes.
familiar to them.
Yes. I couldn't give you a statistic on a drone success because a drone is one piece, as we say in law enforcement, our toolbox. So a drone is just one tool in the toolbox between the officers and the community and our canine friends and technology that bring doorbell cameras and so on and so on. Drone is just one important tool in that toolbox.
Hey, I think I got her in the woods. Yeah, she might be able to hear your name if you call her from now. She's going to be about, I would say about 80 feet in front of you. I got 2 deputies. Yep, just keep walking that direction.
Oh, there she is. Genesis, come here, sweetie. Hey!
Let's get you out of the water. I'll get you out of the water.
We're gonna have you sit right here, okay? Sit right here with your legs hanging out. That okay? How long? You were walking quite a bit, sweetheart.
What was that?
We were looking for you, sweetheart.
There are some specific incidents that I utilize in my training because they really showcase some of the things that I want to drive home in the training. And one occurs, it's from 2017. It's out of Buckeye, Arizona. A young man named Connor Leibel. He is 14 years old. His routine is his caregiver, Diane, actually takes his sister to a music lesson. And his routine is he walks around one of the local parks, and he's fidgeting with a piece of string. So we know some of the characteristics of our loved ones with disability, or autism specifically. This is stimming, right? It's that form of self-regulation. He's stimming with a piece of string, and that's his connection to an inanimate object, which we know a lot of our kids do on a regular basis. So as he's walking around, an officer sees him. The officer is a DRE, or a drug recognition expert. He thinks that Connor's actually under the influence of something. So he gets out to investigate. He approaches Connor, and Connor's a pretty good self-advocate. When the officer says, "What are you doing with your hands?" He says, "I'm stimming."
What are you doing?
I'm stimming.
What?
How you doing with this?
What is that?
And he goes, "This is a piece of string." The officer really goes hands on with Connor, tries to pat him down, and Connor immediately reacts. The officer then takes Connor down to the ground. He's pinned to the ground. At that point, Diane, the caregiver, walks up and explains that Connor has autism.
He's fighting with me. What's going on? Do you know him? Okay. Okay. I'm waiting for another unit to show up, and then we're going to figure out what's going on, okay? He's fine. He's breathing. He just started.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I was just in a music lesson. He usually just walks around. Was he hurting somebody?
No, I was trying to talk to him. I wasn't sure what was going on. And then he started trying to back away from me and then kind of pull away from me
When that video first came out in 2017, first and foremost, I pictured it as one of my own sons. Some of those very characteristics that Connor is displaying are the same ones that my sons display. But when I watched it the second time, there were some giant red flag characteristics that Connor displays in the very brief interaction the officer has with Connor, but the officer misses them. And this is where the training comes in, is had he picked up on some of the cues of Connor's stimming, deficits in Connor's tone of voice, his attachment to his inanimate object, all these different things, the officer has said, I don't think this is somebody that's under influence anymore. I think it's somebody who has a disability. So let me shift my tactics and find out what is really going on. But again, we go back to, we don't know what we don't know. And this is where the training is so critical for our first responders, because had the officer picked up on some of those cues, that interaction probably goes very, very different. Connor's actually injured during the interaction with the officer, and there was a pretty hefty lawsuit that was dropped on the Buckeye Police Department because of that interaction. Again, I use this incident because that incident is preventable.
Do you want the grass stain on his shirt too?
No, I don't think so. He's okay?
He's very flexible. So it was just a very odd situation, and maybe you should, don't take this wrong way, but maybe
okay.
your officers should learn more about, disabilities too.
Yeah, another one that's just recently kind of coming out now, and I was actually contacted on a specific case by the family representing the family. An individual, Eric Parsa. Eric is 16 years old. Again, he's a severe form of autism. He is nonverbal, meaning he cannot communicate with you vocally. His family is exiting a laser tag facility, and I'm sure that Eric is overwhelmed, right? It's complete and total sensory input. Eric can't communicate that he's overwhelmed, and his characteristics is becomes aggressive. And he does turn aggressive with his dad and his mom. They're trying to get Eric calmed down, but there's an officer in this strip mall and witnesses this interaction and approaches. During the interaction, Eric then turns his aggression towards the officer. The officer gets Eric down on the ground. The officer himself is large. He's about 300 pounds himself, and keeps Eric pinned to the ground for an extended period of time. And during that interaction, Eric goes unresponsive. Eric is transported to the hospital, and he is pronounced dead at the hospital. And I talk about this because a common physical characteristic of autism is many of our loved ones with autism will be hypotonic, meaning they have underdeveloped trunk muscles specifically. Why is this important for us as law enforcement? Because, and we've been trained about positional asphyxia for law enforcement for over 2 decades. We know that in an excited state, if you put somebody face down or in a prone position, and now you have their arms restrained behind their back, they struggle to breathe. And what it is that diaphragm just does not have the room to expand. And ultimately what happens is they suffocate under their own body weight. And that's exactly what happens with Eric. So I talk about it because that department, the settlement for that department was $1.25 million that they had to pay Eric's family for the wrongful death lawsuit. And the caveat was that Eric's parents pushed that that department be trained, which is why I was contacted. But we know that the department should have been trained before that interaction, not after it. And I think that's where we want to be proactive in making sure this training gets out now as opposed to after an incident.
Is there anything else that you think we should add to enhance, the fact that everybody should be signing up for autism training?
I think it should be mandated for law enforcement across the country, not just Illinois, not just Florida, not just here or there, not just once in the police academy. It should be an annual mandate where you have to do that. There are some trainings that are annual mandated, and I get that. But there's some of the critical ones that we need, like use of force and mental health awareness. And these are all crisis type calls that we're going to respond to. But our calls with our individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities is critical. Just if you're doing mental health training, it should be incorporated in together, because a lot of the strategies that you're going to utilize in both those situations will be applicable to both.
To not give officers training that they need, to not be aware that these are the types of calls that your officers are going on, and how are we going to respond differently? So when we created our Collaborative Crisis Services Unit, that came out of an incident that had happened here in Elgin. It came out of the number of calls for service that we're seeing just explode with mental health. And so, it's not for us to sit and say, well, that's just what's going on in the community and we're just going to keep doing what we do, typical policing. That's not what policing is. Policing, the one constant in policing is change. To have something tragic happen, and you can't foresee the future, but it's devastating. And why not do something and be proactive? And while that's going on, you're getting to meet really great people and you're building great relationships, and the officers, are seeing things differently through a different lens and a different perspective, which only makes it better for everybody. So it's definitely something that I think as a priority should be a priority for any law enforcement agency, to really sit and think about, how are we being responsive to this? And if we're not doing this, are we putting ourselves in a situation that maybe we can avoid, whether that's litigation or a tragic incident? The litigation is one part of these tragedies. And the other part of it is the emotional damage that happens for families, for officers, for people. So why not be a little bit more proactive and try to do the best we can before something does happen?
I tell everybody, I leave every presentation that I do with this fact. 1 in 36 kids will have an autism diagnosis. 2 of them are mine. I do this because maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but somebody in this room, law enforcement-wise, is going to interact with one of my 2 sons. I do this so that you have the best resources and training available, so that interaction is positive for you and for them. They are my motivation. They are why I do this. They are why I travel across the country, while I do 37 presentations in a month to law enforcement, so that they have that ability. And this was never more evident than it was in the past few years, where my role had switched and I went from being the officer responding to the dad calling. And the department that handled my son's call for service was phenomenal. And I was lucky enough to train both of those departments, but their response was textbook. And how do you begin to thank them in those situations? Words can't describe how well they did. And I tell everybody that will listen how wonderful those departments did that night with my own son and his interaction with them. They are my motivation. They are why I do it. I don't want my sons to be one of those next videos. That is the biggest thing. So if I can push that mission out and I can make sure that officers have that resources available to prevent that next negative experience from occurring, then that's why I do it.
What's up, pal? How are you? What's your name?
Chris.
Chris? I'm Frank.
Nice to meet you.
Israel. How old are you today? It's your birthday?
25.
Is it your birthday?
Yes, sir.
You're not just making that up.
Yeah, my
Let me see. Let me see. We tried to light you candles, man, but the wind blew them out for you. But are you allergic to nuts?
Hell no.
All right, we got you.
Give me a lighter in my apartment.
We got a lighter. It's just windy. Can we come inside with you?
Yeah, come in the quarter.
Yeah, can we come in the quarter?
All right, I'm going up before
We're not gonna wake your neighbors, are we? All right, man, Chris.
Oh my God.
Hey, we're happy that you're 25. That's a big number.
How old is?
Huh?
How old are you?
Oh, we're old, man. We're about 40. He's a little younger than me. I'm about to be 30. There you go. Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Chris. Happy birthday to you. There you go, brother. You want to blow him out? Make a wish. There you go.
You got it, boss.
Hey, we wish you the best birthday, okay?
All right.
You gonna
Thank
be all right?
you so much.
You gonna be all right? You good? You
Yeah,
sure?
great.
You need anything else?
Nothing.
All right.
This is more than I can ask for.
All right. Don't eat it all in one sitting, all right? Take it easy, brother. God bless you.
I just want to say thank you for watching that. We have on Zoom with us Officer Robbie Soberano, who is in the documentary, who happens to be an Elgin Police Department officer and the Autism Hero Project community hero. And I kind of wanted to share a little bit of a testimonial with you that it's kind of like, I believe, like what Eric or someone had said earlier. Sometimes we don't realize the ripple effects of our work, and a lot happens behind the scenes. And so we offer this training and we do these things and we just pray and hope, right, that things are being absorbed and that great things will come out of it. But we never really get that confirmation. And this year at our Heroes Unite event, we learned, well, actually, we didn't even learn there necessarily. We learned a little bit, but we didn't know the details. And so I wanted to kind of share with you a testimony. And Kim, I'm going to have you share first, right? And then Dylan, is that okay with you, Dylan? Okay, great. So Kim, are you ready?
All right, I'm not as good as her with this kind of stuff, so I'm a little nervous. And I'm sorry that the officer couldn't be here today, but awesome. And I'm probably not going to be able to do this without crying, so I apologize ahead of time, but I live in East Dundee. My son lives in Carpentersville, but he goes to Elgin Community College. And last August, there was a situation that happened, and he went missing. And I had to call 911. So he was missing for about 30 minutes. And I'm at the college with the security guards there, and they located my son, and Officer Sobrano was with him. My son had contemplated suicide that day. And he's autistic. He was diagnosed when he was 2. And it was the officer that helped him and found him and really made a difference. My son doesn't remember a whole lot about that night, but he was on the phone with his brother. So he's 23, my other son is 21. My other son was on the phone with him when the officers showed up, and my son didn't hang up. So my younger son was going to write something, but unfortunately he goes away to school, and he's traveling for football, so he wasn't able to write anything. But he always told me after that day, he said, the officer, whoever that was, handled that situation perfectly. He's like, Mom, if I could give every award to that officer, I would. Because the way he handled the situation and the way he talked to my brother was perfect. And he's like, I heard everything. I heard the conversation. I heard how it all transpired. And so that's coming from my younger son that heard all of it before I even got there. And so I just wanted to share my story and how important it is. These officers know what they're doing. My son is high functioning, so sometimes you don't notice it. You wouldn't pick up on it right away, but he doesn't do eye contact very well. Social emotional cues are very hard for him. And so that's our biggest fear, or mine as a parent, getting pulled over or getting in an accident. And so because of this, we did go to the event in spring because Officer Sobrano invited us. And we learned more, and it was really meaningful to be there and meeting Tamika and being a part of this. So thank you.
So the crazy part about that is that I actually did not learn this story that night. I actually did not learn this story until the week of our gala, which was just at the end of September. And is it okay for me to share? That day when we met, they were looking for social support groups, and we kind of referred them to a social support group online, a Facebook group. And this event was in April. In September, the mid-September, she writes a post in this social support group, and she shares, I've been in this group for a while, but this is the first time I'm publicly posting, and I just wanted to share a little bit about my story. And I'm looking for friends for my son, and she shared how her son almost committed suicide and that she went to this event, and that's how she learned about the group. And I was like, wait a minute, that is our Evolving Hero recipient that I had no idea, but he had won one of our college scholarships. And I was like, wait, what event was this? Like, what? So I private messaged her, and she was like, yes, at your event, Heroes Unite, that's the one. And it's just like a full circle moment And of course, I got her permission. And then I was like, Chief, screenshot send, right? I was like, it's working. What we're doing is working. And this is just one story, just one that we learned about. And then little by little, more and more started to come out. And so it's just affirmation. Like, I was like, God, thank you. This is not in vain, right? And so, Dylan, I have a very important question for you, because one of Dylan's triggers is law enforcement. And so it took him a lot to be here today. And so I want to thank you for doing this. And this is really important. He does not like officers. He has, he just doesn't. He's scared, and for obvious reasons, right? But Dylan, after seeing this, why is this training so important, and what would you like officers to know and understand?
All right. I just know that with a lot of the neurodivergent community, especially autistic people, that a normal confrontation, even for something as trivial as a speeding ticket, can be life or death with a bad officer. It's something, officers are just people that a lot of autistic people inherently distrust, because it's a sort of idea that they have to uphold the standard and that deviations generally have not been accepted for the longest time. However, the training from first responders to be able to better accept and better be able to handle with neurodivergent and autistic people is a great step forward in the right direction. It's far from the only problem that goes on with law enforcement. There's a lot of change that needs to be made outside of that, but this is a great step into that. And Tamiko is right at the very start of what we're saying, is that the autism community in general is far past the stage of autism awareness. That's not enough these days. We need full-on autism acceptance. Autism celebration, I never heard until Tamika said it. More and more autistic people are being put on this planet each day, and despite what the society sort of silently indicates, autism doesn't magically go away once they're not children. It's something that we have to live with forever, and the support networks need to be in place for autistic adults to function in this strange, noisy, crazy world. So I commend Tamika's efforts and the Elgin Police Department's efforts, and thank you, Officer Sobrano, for being one of the good ones.
Man, I say Dylan for president. That was so well said, Dylan. Thank you so much. Thank you. Can I hug you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much for sharing your testimony. It's all good. Can I get our panelists up here? So I'm going to start with Senator Cristina Castro. Thank you for saying yes. State Attorney Jamie Moser. Chief Police Anna Lally, Eric Echeverria. Can I also get, and this is, I know unexpectedly, Ashley, our Bright Cat production, but I know this was not in any of the marketing, but prior Senator Nolan, Judge Nolan is here with us today, and while he's walking up here, I'm just gonna share a little something. I don't even know if Senator Nolan knows this, so, Judge noticed. Yeah, sorry, Christina. You're like, I got that position. No, I'm sorry. Former Cristina Castro. No. So when I was a school teacher, second grade dual language, here at U46, my first autistic student that I ever received was Judge Nolan's son. And the crazy part about this, and I know you don't know this, thank you, Chad. I couldn't see you. The crazy part about this was I was pregnant with my legendary kid. And there's some school teachers that, Channing representa, where are you at? Woo! Evelyn, you're former Channing, you can cheer too. So here's what's crazy. I was pregnant, and actually, Teresita, you were one of them. We decided, Teresa had had his son in first grade and kindergarten, and she was like, okay, so you're about to get this student, so let me let you know his IEP and all this other good stuff. And I decided while I was pregnant to take an autism class. And we took an autism class, and here's what's crazy, and I'm gonna say this because I'm gonna be vulnerable. I gave birth July 19th, and our first assignment was due like within a couple of days from that. And the very first assignment says, basically, tell me what you know about autism. And I really didn't know much. I hadn't had my student yet. I only knew, everybody knew your solution. Everybody knew him in the school. He was so dynamic, right? And so I was brutally honest. I said, I didn't know anything, but I just gave birth 2 days ago, and I don't know what I would do if my own son was autistic. Fast forward almost 5 years later, and we get our autism diagnosis. And it's funny because God is just funny. What I wrote in that paper came full circle. And I had forgotten that I had written that until a little over a year ago when I retired from U46, and I was packing up my classroom, and I found all of my classroom files, and I found my autism class file, and I opened it, and it was the very first page I wrote, and I read everything I wrote, and I cried. Tears of joy, because my legendary kid has truly been my best teacher, and I am the teacher. He has taught me more than I could ever teach him. He's like the most beautiful creature in the world, and he's funny, and he has so much to offer this world, and there's such beauty in autism. And that's the beauty that we try to show the world through the Autism Hero Project every day. We're all different. Appreciate our differences. That's what makes the world beautiful, is that diversity. And so I just wanted to share that story, and you inspired that story just when I saw you show up. So I'm going to separate, not because you guys smell bad or anything, just because this way you guys can share the mic. And I have a couple quick questions for them, and then we're going to open up the floor to any comments and Q&As that you guys might have. So are we ready? You know what? Can you guys introduce yourselves? Because Chad, I don't think they know who you are, but I know who you are. So go ahead.
I'm Detective Benavidez with the Elgin Police Department. I'm currently assigned to the Collaborative Crisis Services Unit.
Judge Michael Noland, currently assigned to the Traffic and Misdemeanor Court, King County, right there at Route 38 Randall Road.
Ashley from Bright Camp Entertainment, founder.
Erica Chavarria, retired commander from Elgin Police and currently Peoria Police Department, Chief of Police.
Not retired, not yet.
From Elgin.
A little break. Anna Lally, Chief of Police of Elgin.
I am King County State's Attorney Jamie Mosser. I am now thankfully serving my second term as your newly re-elected State's Attorney.
I'm Illinois State Senator, Majority Caucus Whip for the 103rd General Assembly, I think, 103rd. And I represent the Elgin area, Carpentersville, Hoffman Estates, Hanover Park, Streamwood, and a portion of Schaumburg.
I am Robbie Silverano, patrol Elgin Police Department.
Testing. Can you guys hear me? Great. If not, I'll yell. All right, so I got to stand. I got too much energy to sit. Okay, so first question, and this one is first for the law enforcement that we have on the stage. From a law enforcement perspective, and obviously after seeing this, what are just some of the unique challenges that maybe our audience doesn't necessarily realize that you have faced responding to calls involving autistic individuals, and maybe what has some of this training that you guys have been receiving, how has that made the difference? Robbie, do you want to go first?
No, yeah, I'll go first.
Go.
I think knowledge is key, and I think when what we have with our systems and everything in place, with a premise alert, a family finder combined together, it's a time-sensitive thing when we get called to a call. We oftentimes we only have minutes to decide what we need to do. As much knowledge as we have about the location, about the incident is better for us because it allows us to really just adjust our response. And I think that's a key thing that people have to understand is that we're given almost last-minute information, and we have to decide in seconds what we have to do oftentimes. And bottom line is our safety, but also the safety of the people that we deal with. So the more knowledge that we have is really the most important thing for that matter.
So more knowledge that you can give and impart on the first responders, the better off. Chad,
Absolutely.
do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so in my position, I get to work with individuals with special needs. So my biggest thing is just the understanding that autism is on a spectrum. So every call that you go to, every individual that you're working with is going to be, they're an individual. They're exactly that. So having to kind of understand the different triggers and different things that this individual might face that others might not. And once you move past that communication barrier, you figure out how to interact with them, you have rapport with that person for life. So the biggest thing for me is just surrounding yourself with as many of these individuals as possible because it allows you to really get a scope of the spectrum and just kind of pick up on things and kind of try and figure out, what things work best for that individual. So.
That's great advice. I love that.
So I'm gonna talk about it from two different sides, but I think one of the main things for us, I think it causes us to slow down. When you realize and you look at the muscle definition, the tone and voice, the no eye contact, the repeating of a question or what's your name, those things, it causes us to slow down because we understand there's something else at play. But Robbie, can you hear me? I want to share a story about Robbie, if I can. It's probably a little personal to Robbie, but I'm going to share if it's okay. So Robbie and I, our lockers were in the same area in the locker room. And I think from a supervisor position or a position of authority in a department or anywhere else, I remember seeing Robbie coming in and he'd have scratch marks on his face. And there was some issues. He'd show up late. There was some things that were happening. He looked tired. And there were other supervisors. Robbie was very private about his personal life. But we shared a lot. We worked together for a long time, but we were in the locker room together. And so I knew, and he knew I had a brother. He had a son. I'd always ask him, how's your son doing? But I understood that there was something else going on at home. And we were able to then deal with that as well, where I could talk to other supervisors and say, hey, back off him. There's something else going on. Go talk to him, figure it out. We need to give him a little bit of leeway. There's other things that are happening. So I think it's not just as law enforcement, but I think as employers as well.
Yes.
And I think just to kind of, from the administrative side, obviously, being the chief of police, it's about the education for the officers, which is most important, as you can see through the video. When I watch those videos and I see the horrendous things that happen, when Tamika and I had that conversation at lunch, I was kind of like, Tamika, I'm only the police chief in Elgin. I can only do what I can do here, right? But what I can also do is through my connections, get that message out to other police chiefs. Whether or not they choose to do something, it's their department. But it's important that, police chiefs and administrators and people in organizations, that when somebody comes to you and says, this is what's going on, that you listen. And I want to thank Robbie, and I also want to thank Chad for the work that they do. It's very important. And we're here again because of them. And so I think it's important for the education, the training. It doesn't matter, the cost. I have a couple of council members here who support me and support the endeavors that we do. And then on the other side, it's also important that the education for the community and also how do you tap into resources. So we have something called a special needs registry, which is what Robbie talked about and mentioned also in the video. You can go on our app and you can download a form where basically you can say, here's all the information. So if you get a call at my house, you already have this information about this person. And, behaviors, things that might, be disturbing to them, how to respond, last time where we found this person. So knowledge is power. And so if you give that to us and we can tap into that before the officer arrives, we're just giving them enough information and a little bit more than if they were just to go in there blind. And that information might be the difference between the videos that you see in the beginning of that video and the videos that you see at the end.
Yeah, and something amazing is that you can go to the City of Elgin's website, actually, and you can upload a photo of your autistic individual in your life, and you can put, if they're an eloper, right, where do they tend to run to? Where do they tend to go? Because they tend to go to the places that they already know or are familiar with, right? If they are nonverbal, if they need something that, like a soothing, there's something that they love. Like my son, if you see half my pictures on social media, he's always carrying around a little Mario plushie. And that's his inanimate object. That's his comfort. So he's always with his plushie. So you can upload all of this information so that when the officer gets the call, oh, Mario, I know that when I get to that house, I'm going to say something about Mario, right? Like just simple little things. Knowledge is power. So thanks.
Just on the back of those resource guides that were handed out, there's a QR code for the Google Play app for the EPD app and also the Apple Store app. So you can access it straight through there. If anyone has any questions, I can help you through it.
And then my next question is for our legislators who are here, who I am so thankful. I've been wanting to work with Senator Castro for a while. We're like personal friends, but I was like, Senator, I need you. Anyway, so this question is really geared to our legislators. Obviously, as constituents, there's, we wanted to show you what today was about, but, we can't. Inclusion comes with policy change, with laws being changed, right? That's how the system changes. And for so many parts of how policy works, it's usually after a tragedy. I don't want to wait at the cost of someone's life or someone getting hurt, or there's ripple effects to that. So I want it to be proactive as best as we can. And so I just want to discuss, Judge Nolan, State Attorney, what are, your role as a policymakers in legislation, how can you support this inclusive first responder training?
So I think one of the things I would say is we just passed a law that makes it mandatory.
Right.
It is Senate Bill 3201. It was sponsored by Senator Natalie Toro in my chamber, and then Representative Mike Kelly. I see Representative Michelle Mussman in the audience, who also supported this. And I think one of the things, it will mandate beginning January 1st of 2025, that all officers be trained on appropriate responses. I know one of the questions is the tool. Right. This couldn't be a tool. The Illinois State Police will be looking at the curriculum to identify the appropriate tools, but the most important part is that every police department and every police officer will have to have this training once every 3 years, and every cadet, right, currently in the academy will also have to go through this training before they graduate. Advocacy is the most important part. One of the things that I would tell you is Tamika and I always talk about where can we improve. And sometimes you don't want it to be a tragedy that happens, but sometimes it ends up becoming a tragedy. But there have also been other instances where Tamika has flagged a few things that have been trying to work its way through the legislature. And like any governing body, sometimes it takes a little bit of massaging and conversation, educating, because a lot of people don't understand why, right? And putting a face to it, as many of the parents who are here, their children, and talking about how that impact is important and why a law change is required, is one of the things that you all have, whether it's myself, whether it's Representative Mussman, but also your state's attorney, your police chief, your officers, right? Many of them will come to me with things that need to be addressed, right? We passed some drone laws that allows the Elgin Police Department to do some of these tools and utilize them. So as new tools become available, or new ideas, sometimes one police department, sometimes one state's attorney's office or whatnot will implement it and say, hey, this is a great idea, we use it, this is how we use it, this should be a statewide initiative. So, I think one of the things here is, like these constant conversations, these horrible stories have resulted in changing legislation that will require folks to be sensitive and to work with healthcare professionals and help our officers have more tools as they're dealing with this.
And while you pass that mic, I do want to say something. One of the great things is when our legislators makes themselves accessible, right? Like Michelle Mussman, she's of Schaumburg. She's not on the stage today, but we have talked and we have, talked about collaborations, and she's come to our gala and she's very invested in the community. And, the only thing that sets us apart is that she hasn't given me her personal cell phone number, unlike Castro. You might not want to after this, but if you do, that's great. Because by being accessible, the one great thing is, we've become friends, but we will private message each other about all kinds of topics. And when I'm really upset about something in the community or something related to autism, I shoot it off to her. And you know what's great? There was one bill recently that I shot off to her, and she gave me insight that I didn't know. And I was like, okay, now I know how to work with that. But it's because she's approachable, accessible, because I dare to ask, and maybe a little more aggressive than that. But she is, she's made herself accessible. And thank you, Christina, for, obviously our personal relationship and for allowing me to do that. I appreciate that. Jamie?
So poor Senator Castro is very accessible all the time because I've come to her for legislation as well. When I was first running for office and I was going door to door, one of the things that I heard from a lot of people was that they didn't like that they had to be in the criminal justice system as in arrested and being prosecuted by my office to get the help that they needed. And so as a result of that, one of the things I did is a significant amount of research, and I learned that there's a program, it's called pre-arrest diversion or law enforcement assisted diversion. And the idea,
right?
What's that?
Lead?
Lead, yes.
Okay.
And the idea behind that is when the officers see that somebody is committing crimes and it has a mental health component to it or substance use or even a lack of resources, instead of arresting that person, they go to case managers. And I love the idea of it. And I have to say I'm very lucky to have Elgin as one of the police departments in my county because when this idea was brought to them, they said yes immediately. Because they already had their CCSU that was working with individuals, and now they have more resources. And so we applied for a lot of grants, federal grants, state grants, and we were able to create Illinois' only pre-arrest diversion program, which I'm very proud of.
Will you share, yesterday at lunch, will you please share the one story that we talked about before you pass that mic?
I will definitely. So the idea behind this is that people need help, but they need help individually, not because we think it is, but it's what we can really do. And so we had a person who was mentally ill. He didn't have a diagnosis. He was unmedicated. He was living with an elderly mother, and he was growing a significant amount of marijuana in his basement. And as a result of that, he would actually cultivate the marijuana, but then just drop it off at the sheriff's office, which for law enforcement purposes, little investigation, so it was very helpful.
Right away, that's all she had told me in the beginning of her story, and I was like, wait, so he grew in the basement tons of marijuana and would turn it in? I said, was he autistic?
And he was. And so he had also a delusional diagnosis with it, and so at some point, we referred him, the sheriff's office referred him to our free case managers who helped him with where he was. And that's not physically, it's with what he actually needs. And they do a harm reduction approach, which means what can we do to lessen what is happening? Eventually, they were able to get him in to see a doctor, to get some medication, to get him some resources, and then we were able to help him get a job at a Home Depot where he works in their garden center, and he's able to do what his passion is.
Isn't that an amazing story?
And so we're gonna prove it here in Kane County, and then I'm gonna come to my good, accessible friend, Senator Castro, to see if we can mandate this statewide.
I'm behind that bill with you. Isn't that a beautiful story? He kept getting in trouble. They got him a formal diagnosis. They got him the medication. They got him the resources. They got him the job, and he was doing something he loved, and all of the crime and the behaviors and all that stopped. He got what he needed. Judge Nolan?
Well, the title that I have, that is probably, okay, Is that better?
Yes.
Can you hear me better now? Okay, all right. The title that I have, aside from judge, that is probably most relevant here today, is Lucian's dad. And I got to tell you, I want to thank Tamika, I want to thank Ashley, all of law enforcement that is here today for bringing this documentary and making the issue overall more digestible and understandable to those of us. I will tell you that before my son's diagnosis, and I had been a substitute teacher in U46, and I worked with special needs students, but my understanding of autism was a child off to the side, bouncing back and very quietly, with a nonverbal, bouncing back and forth in a chair, and that was it. That was basically it. Come to find out, after Lucian was diagnosed, he was at Illinois Park, and I don't know if those of you are aware of Ms. Thompson at Illinois Park. I'm going to give her a shout out. Because when he was 5 or 6, she spotted it. She was his teacher in kindergarten, and she spotted that he was just not responding the way that other kids were, and she knew her stuff. We had him diagnosed, and he was put on an IEP, and U46 really led the charge with regard to allowing access to kids who need the IEP. And it's something that's been a struggle, because all of the things that we're talking about, the mandates, so on and so forth, whether they're educational mandates or they're law enforcement mandates, we all have to pay for that. The money has to come from somewhere, and that's revenue, and we have to be willing to do that. I believe most people are. We do basically 3 things. I learned this as a state senator. I know it as a judge. We do basically 3 things as a state. We educate, we medicate, and we incarcerate. That's about it. That's about it. And if we do not educate...
Will you say those 3 things even louder?
Sure. We educate, we medicate, and we incarcerate. By education, getting the resources to kids that is necessary is going to allow them to cope much better, making their way in life. And I consider that also, too, with the social work and the mental health services that are necessary. That would be considered medication, in a sense. Doesn't always require pharmaceuticals. It's counseling, etc. It's getting, like I say, those resources that are necessary to guide them through their lives. And then incarceration, if we don't do those things, it ultimately comes to me as a judge. And that's so preventable. It truly is. I want to commend State's Attorney Mosser for her proactive attempts at case management and assigning case workers to some of these. Yeah, that to me smacks of an old saying that I think rings true time and again in these situations, and that is, what would Andy Griffith do, right? What would he do? He would, rather than a stick, he would apply the carrot, because the stick is not always necessary. And I think that's what we're getting with some of the late legislation that Senator Castro is sponsoring, that Tamika's working on, and that makes my job as a judge a whole lot easier, okay? And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. I know I sprung this at you like right as we were walking on stage, but God, it was meant to be. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your words. This question is aimed for our first responders who are on the stage. How does Heroes Unite, and Robbie, you can get back in there. Oh, Ben is with us. Hi, Ben. So Robbie, Chad, Eric, and Chief Anna, how does Heroes Unite, what do you think? How does it aim to shift the perspective on autism and emergency responses? And what are you hoping comes out of the documentary for your first responders and really for the community, like the impact on the community?
Yeah, I'll start. So I think with Heroes United and the Autism Hero Project, I think it's just very simply awareness, acceptance, getting more people involved, exposing more people to what's actually going on. And as I said earlier, I think a lot of times people just, they're nervous. They're afraid to share their story. They're embarrassed. They don't know how people are going to react. So I think when you just let people be and just, we appreciate you, we respect you. It doesn't matter where you come from, right? I think that's where people need to come together more often and more frequently than this constant divisiveness. And I'm afraid to say this because if somebody knows that my son or daughter is autistic, well, how will they look at me at work? What Eric mentioned about Robbie,
that can be a very overwhelming thing, especially in the police department. You know, you come to work, you are, you know, expected to perform at a very high level. The community deserves that. But you have to be okay with yourself first. And you have to make sure that the things that are going on at home or in your personal life are taken care of. You cannot take care of people if you don't have your own mental health is in check. You know, you see the world very differently. You understand things. And then you can bring that to your community and bring that to your department. So I think the Autism Hero Project does just that. And then with training, it is a mandate, as Senator Castro mentioned, that officers receive this training once every 3 years. And to ensure that, you know, there's that constant conversation though, right? Once every 3 years is that kind of official. But we do our Autism Hero Project, you know, our event every year, and there's always a touch on some type of training. And then we have officers who are intimately involved in the conversation, and that conversation has to keep continuing. And you also, because things change, evolve. How do we handle things? What should we be doing better? So, you know, that inquisitive mindset about what more can we do? How can we make it better? Who can we get involved? And it never ends, right? That mentality, it never ends. And you have to come into this knowing that, you know, that's what is going to make it better for somebody. And it could be a conversation, it could be a smile, it could be someone who, you know, understands, you know, the situation and doesn't, you know, judge. And that lessens people's stress. And then people come forward, and then people can feel safe to want to meet the police, to talk to us. And so it's incumbent upon us to extend our hand first. And I hope through this video, that's the way that we do it.
If I understood your question right, it's what does AHP bring? What is the value of it, right?
Actually, it was really Heroes Unite, but yeah,
Heroes
HP
United,
brought
Heroes
it.
United,
So, yeah,
okay,
why
same
not?
thing. All right, Heroes United. What I think, you know, to Chief Lally, I think it brings it to the forefront, right? When the video was over, I'll say I have two people from my department that came with me today, Officer Collins and Jenny Urquiza, who is our grant manager. And I looked in their direction because they haven't had this in our city. And, or at least for Officer Collins, who's been there 25 years. And
wow. And
the
you
first
haven't?
thing he says is, that was great, something to the effect of, that was awesome. And I think that's what it does. It brings and it sheds light to officers. You know, we can sit here as the chiefs and we do, and we mandate we got to have this done, and we got to get this done, and we got to get this done. But truly, at the end of the day, we also want their buy-in, because Anna and I aren't on the street. We're not on the street. We entrust our sergeants, our lieutenants, our captains, our commanders, our assistant chiefs to really make sure that the mission is being handled, that the day-to-day operations are happening. But we want the buy-in of everybody in the department to understand this is how we have to do policing. And I think when I looked over and I saw him, you could almost see the emotions on everybody's face. I lived through this with my brother, and I immediately said, yeah, I understand that, I understand that. When we can get everybody in an agency to understand that, that's where we see the real change, and I think that's what it does.
Chad?
I think that the, you know, Heroes Unite, I hope what would come out of it is exactly what the name is, that we'd be able to kind of unite together and kind of move towards shift in perspectives or perceptions on both sides. So police officers seeing, you know, coming to an understanding of, a better understanding of the autism spectrum, but then also individuals who have autism and their families hopefully will have a perception shift towards officers. That as, especially in Elgin, as we're doing these follow-ups with these families and going out and coming alongside them, I mean, a lot of these things, especially as like a first-time autism parent, a lot of these things that you have to apply for and people you have to get in touch with and things like that can be a lot for people. So, you know, not just pointing them in the right direction, but taking their hand and bringing them to the people and you know, just helping them have a better understanding of, you know, we're not just here to enforce the laws, but we're here to find like long-term solutions and hopefully get to a point where we're no longer just acting, you know, kind of on the back foot, but we're moving forward and trying to prevent things before they happen. And I think that that's just a really big thing. And hopefully that things like this in this documentary will hopefully not just be a perception change for police officers, but also for families. They can look at this and say, I no longer have to be scared of my kid getting pulled over. I no longer have to be, because there's officers out here, there's departments who are dedicating time to this training, and hopefully, yeah, we can see some growth in that.
Robbie, do you want to add anything?
Really, I just want to say that, I think the training that we're doing and the yearly trainings that we do with the in-services are really helpful. And I think also maintaining that training when the new officers come, and the chief has a good sense to hire the best officers coming up here, and teaching that and instilling that sense of I guess would be a sense of just duty to serve everybody equally, right? That's the whole premise of the premise alert law, was that we provide the same level of service to everybody, regardless of ability or disability, I guess you could say. And just enforcing that, I get the mandate now, which is great, but also just to having that idea of, you can't change everybody's perception of what they think about mental health, special needs, and everything else. Each officer has their own biases, I guess you could say, but giving them that knowledge, at least, so they don't always have to embrace this whole concept of how we do policing now, which is an awesome thing to do for us as officers in community policing, but they just have to know it, so that when that time comes, when they're dealing with somebody, they know, they have that knowledge, they have that experience, or the training, at least the basic knowledge that this is something different from just crime fighting or anything else like that, or stopping a violent incident. There's something more to this. There's more levels to this. And I think that's key to this, to continue doing and keeping the momentum going. Because I think we're kind of speeding up now, and I think that's, like you said, it's not about awareness anymore. It's acceptance, it's inclusion, it's education, and all those things really matter. And I think we can't lose that momentum. I think we need to go through that as full force.
And I just want to say, Eric, you actually took the words right out of my mouth without you even realizing it. But when we made this documentary, it's easy to say that we now have a mandate starting next year. But that does not get the buy-in. And so when I came up with this idea for this documentary, what I really wanted to see was, how do I educate? How do I make sure that they're aware of the warning signs, right? That someone may potentially be autistic. How do I remind every department of the resources that they can access in emergency situations? But more importantly, I want to hit these cops at the heart. I want them to be convicted at the heart. I want, for humanity's sake, for them to want to do the right thing. And in order to do that, you have to know what the right thing is. You have to see what the right thing looks like. And so my goal in making this documentary was that it does become part of the mandated training. I can sit down as a teacher. I can tell you, we got curriculum, we teach students, but you know what? I could be here preaching and giving a sermon and doing everything. That does not mean that the student is going to take in the information in the way that they need to. But ready? Through storytelling. Through our stories, through the idea that maybe one of these people could be your child, your brother, your mother, your father, right? Your neighbor, your grandchild. And being able to understand that autism doesn't just affect an individual, it affects a community. And so hoping, right, that these stories hit at the heart and that these cops say, I don't want to be the police officer in that video who didn't take out the taser or tased someone 17 times who was walking away from me and continuously, nonstop, right? Or even if you think about the very last video, the happy video, the birthday video, when he called 911 to tell them that he was lonely and it was his birthday. If you just looked at him and you didn't know that this video was about autism, right, and you just saw him, it's very easy to see, truthfully, if you're not trained to the trained eye, he actually looks like he might be under the influence. No eye contact, eye aversion. did you see, like, he was a little wobbly, right? Delayed speech, intonation of voice. There were so many things that, to the untrained eye, he looked like he could have been on drugs. But when you get this training, all of this starts to click in your mind. Wait. It's not just one thing. It's this plus this plus this plus this. Let me use what I've learned and just see. And that's what my hope is to get the buy-in. All right, Ashley, you've been patient and silent. This next question is specifically for you. Ashley, you don't have a child on the spectrum, obviously,
Yep.
right? And we've been working together for years through all of the videos that we've been producing together. And can you just talk a little bit about, like, from a perspective of a neurotypical, right, who has neurotypical children, like, just how this journey has been together as we've been working together and learning?
Oh man, I think, you know, the interesting thing about this journey so far, I'm a big learner. I love learning about people's stories. To your point on storytelling, I think that that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, is because I want to share story in a way that is impactful. You know, whenever, I think if you want to be effective at filmmaking, it has to start with the feeling of what you want people to leave with. And for me, it was pretty evident from working with you that you have a passion and you have a heart and you have a desire for people in this world to know about the reality of what autism looks like and the beauty of autism. And so I think that coming from a world that I really didn't know much about it, and just stepping into the space and learning so much about the love and the care and the compassion that the community has for one another, one of the telling things that you said was talking about it could be your neighbor. Well, all of these people, Ray John Cherry was my neighbor. Connor Lible is my neighbor. And when you look at these stories, Ryan Gaynor, who suffered a tragic death, he's my neighbor. Eric Parsa, who suffered a suffocation, he was my neighbor. And when I look at those stories, I want people to feel that they need to do something. There has to be a conviction to move the needle forward. And so that's the power of storytelling. That is really how our culture works today. People are stuck on their cell phones looking at content consistently. And what I want to do, and I think what the heart of our company at Bright Cap Entertainment really is to share stories that will create impact and that will shift the needle towards hope. And I think that there is hope in Autism Hero Project. I think there's hope in the people that are on this panel that I'm so honored to be seated next to, people that have dedicated their lives to a service of influence in the community that is positive, when there is a light that shines on the world when there's such heavy conflict, you know. And I know in my heart of hearts that not all cops are bad. You know, I know in my heart of hearts that not all politicians are bad. I know that the reality is that we just need to tell the stories that are going to move people in a way that creates change in a positive way. Because as much as conflict sells, I think that bigger than that, hope changes.
We're hope dealers.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to open up the floor for a few minutes of anybody wants to make a comment or a Q&A. We have microphone stands. There's microphones there. If anyone has a question or a comment, this is your opportunity before we close out and say thank you. Anybody? No, we took care of it. That's how good we were. Oh, you do? Okay, great.
Hi.
And you can line up behind her to make it faster if you want.
My name is Alyssa Mitchell. I'm the director of the RISE program here at Judson University. And thanks.
Woo! Go, Alyssa. Go RISE.
I love the idea of this training, and I think what is cool about it is the reach of once you get this training of what can be dreamed out past it. And something that RISE has been really, really blessed by is Detective Benavides's Police Academy, is what we call it, that has come here to Judson. And I know he is dreaming up to expand that. And I think so much of that starts with this training, and then it gets to be dreamed up to be bigger and how it can affect the community around us. So I was wondering, Chad, if you would be willing to share a little bit about your dream of Police Academy, the why, and what it's going to be. And wait, RISE, do we love Chad? Right?
I love you guys too. Yeah, I'll just give like a short synopsis of it, I guess. But during my senior year here at Judson, I, to be completely honest, didn't have in my earlier life a lot of interaction with individuals on the spectrum, anyone with special needs really. My senior year at Judson, they started the RISE program, and on my floor I had 2 individuals in the RISE program who lived on my floor, and I became really close with them. So once I graduated and got hired at Elgin, I knew that one day I wanted to come back and work with them in some capacity. So then I was doing some follow-ups with CCSU prior to being in the unit, and one of the RISE students was suicidal and had to go to the hospital. During that time, she called for an ambulance, and during my follow-up, speaking with Janine, who is the former director, she explained to me that this individual had gone to the hospital for these things in the past, but she was always driven there by her parents. She never had to interact with the police, never had to interact with firefighters, ambulance, anything like that. So when talking with her, she was very freaked out, obviously, triggered by a lot of the stuff. So my idea was, what if we surround ourselves with them and just show them that, we're not people you need to be scared of, but people who are here to help you. So I created the RISE Police Academy, and it's basically our Citizens Police Academy, but scaled down a little bit. It covers things like when to call 911, difference between an emergency and a non-emergency. We do some really fun things too, mock traffic stops, things like that. And the idea behind it is just to not only have them become comfortable with me, which they are very much so, but also comfortable with, we bring other officers around, we bring them to the police department, just so they can see that there's a bunch of different officers who are all there to help them. And yeah, the idea would be to expand it one day to have it through the police department as well. When I pitched the position that I'm in to the chief, that was one of the things I brought up, was expanding my RISE Police Academy to be something that can be held at the police department. So yeah, that's the goal one day, hopefully coming soon.
Thank you, Officer Chad. We all love him. All the RISE students do. And I'm one of the students. I'm Grace. And I love what you guys are doing here, especially the legislators. And for those who are working in the government, thank you for that. I actually was a secretary at an organization, a program called At the DHC back at my home, and they they do this like special needs and stuff like that, and yeah, that's like we went to would go to Charleston and just represent our group and stuff like that, and the police department was very was involved with something that happened last year with me. I don't know if you guys want to know about it, but you can always approach me later. But I'm the reason why I'm here. I'm still here, and I couldn't got through anything without it.
Grace, thank you for sharing that story. You can take the microphone off the stand
Cool.
and make it free-flowing if
I'm
that's
Italian.
easier.
I've got a loud voice, anyways. It should.
You're
work.
on live video, so we want to hear you. Here, I'll trade you, darling. Here you go, Leanne. Yeah.
Okay. I'm Laura. My daughter is Hope, and she's on the autism spectrum. And what I appreciate about this, I met Tamika 4 years ago, and Hope prayed with the officers that day.
That was our very first Heroes Unite event that you did that.
Yeah, exactly. And I was completely inspired by what you're doing. I'm very impressed with it. It fills my heart to such an overflow because we work very closely, because we're from DuPage County. We live out of we live further away, but we work very closely with Sheriff Mendrick. In implementing this in the Sheriff's Department, I've had a lot of conversations with Sheriff Mendrick and Commander Terry. And I think what I seen the vision is I shared with your officer, Flores, is that correct?
Yeah, Janny
Yes.
Flores.
That expanding this to fire as well, because and then you as legislators and as state's attorneys creating more legislature for driver's education, bringing in law enforcement, bringing in fire. How do you fill out an accident report? What happens when there's an accident report? What happens when you roll up to a scene? What are you going to see? What are you going to have there? And I had
She's writing your curriculum for you, Chad.
Yeah, I have a whole curriculum in my head that I've been rehearsing for 4 years. So, and believe me, Sheriff Mendrick's heard it a million times. And I love the apps that you have, because I said, what if you put, so that the officers or if fire comes rolling up on the scene, you see the autism scene, you see the autism shield in the back. It's helped me quite a bit having my daughter in the car along with someone else who has autism in the car, where the officer was already prepared for when he came to the car to know that there was somebody with autism in the car. So then that way it changed his perspective on how to react to the call or the traffic violation, right? And then creating a curriculum with driver's education where law enforcement and fire goes into the classroom, create not just a mock traffic stop, right? But a mock accident. What happens with that accident? What are you going to do? How are they going to do it? How are they going to come to the scene, and what do you need to expect from them? Because
Annette, I think we have school curriculum, right? That she's planting those seeds, right?
Exactly. So you in the Senate, and this is state rep, right? My state rep is different because of my county, but creating these conversations so that we can implement it and create change on the ground. And then that way, when you have to deal with us parents because we're crazy, whether you're Italian, Puerto Rican, I don't care what you are, and you got a kid on the spectrum, we're a little psycho, okay? When it comes to our children being hurt or being scared, and knowing we already can see, we've already prepared in advance, if I'm not right, exactly what's going to be happening. It doesn't mean it's happening. We've already got it in our heads. And so how do we stop it? And so thank you for having compassion on us parents that are scared as well. So so maybe some other time we can talk about
Yeah.
it.
We got 6 minutes, 5 minutes now. So yes, absolutely. Next. We got one more after you. Okay.
Thank you. I just want to say, wow, this is awesome.
Thank you.
I have a neighbor across the street from me. He's not living there anymore. His name is Nate DeHaan. You might know him. Watching him grow and become an adult, he's a special needs adult. He helped me in my yard because I hired him. I didn't know he was special needs, and I didn't know that he was on your list. I didn't know the list existed. And here I am, a neighbor in the community. I am also a union carpenter. I am also somebody that saw the website or the Elgin Police Department advertisement about this, and I felt drawn to come. I'm an FAA drone pilot. How can citizens assist you in this? So, having said that, thank you.
Thank you so much. For those of you who are not aware, Elgin, one thing that we created in year one, Eric and I, is we created these special stickers. And so you're hearing about stickers, right? And these special stickers were for parents when they came to the event or when they registered through Premise Alert, Family Finder. They can get a sticker that basically is an identifier that they can put outside of their home, on the door, externally, or in their vehicles, so that right away, let's say they didn't sign up their child necessarily and put the image in there, and so there's no back information technically on them. The minute that an officer, first responder, sees that, it's quickly an identifier. Okay, I'm going into a setting where it's going to be an autistic. And so you go in knowing that ahead of time.
So I have a question for the officers. We're part of District 300, so I'm not too familiar with U46, but especially with the new bill in January, school resource officers, how is that being, are they being taught the same thing? That was my biggest concern with my son in high school.
I think District 300's here. Isn't District 300 here too? I thought Shelley Knack, the Assistant Superintendent of Special Ed, was here. Okay.
Yeah, and when he started freshman year, we actually had a meeting with the officer, and it was very negative and off-putting, so that actually was not his go-to person at all. He had nothing to do with the officer the 4 years that he was there. So any agitation, any issues, he had other people, and that really concerned me, because if there was a major problem, I was really curious what resource officers do in the school districts. Thank you.
Yes, so for, in Elgin, we have school resource officers. We have 7 total. 4 middle schools, 3 high schools, and so every school resource officer goes through the same exact training that every Elgin police officer goes through, including me. So, and on top of that, you know, because they're in the school and they're seeing people, the whole reason of a school resource officer, a lot of people think it's the enforcement, it's the arrest. That is such a small portion. It is the relationship building. It is seeing somebody every single day. They become familiar with you. They may reach out and say, I'm having this issue, this concern. But then if you know that someone is from the community, that you know, especially, you know, building that relationship, you're then able to find out a little bit more about how we can help. So every single officer goes through all the training, regardless what their assignment, all the way up to the chief of police.
Thank you. And then we have our last person. No, I think
Hi, Tamika.
Hi.
And panel. I just want to say you guys did a great job with the Heroes Unite production. What you're doing is amazing. And I wanted to quickly just talk about how Tamika and I met very quickly. Neighbors of mine and family of mine have children with autism. And one of my dearest friends who's here with me today is a BCBA. So she's board certified behavioral analyst, and her son has autism. So ever since Carrie and I became friends, outside of like my family and friends, having kids with autism, I got to learn more. I got to see it firsthand. I got to babysit for her. I see it every day now, and I just know that there's such a need for this kind of awareness, as well as other things that Tamika and I have talked about. So my brother and sister-in-law and nephew are all in law enforcement and other departments, and they have positions that allow them to maybe bring this kind of training